Welcome back. I'm here now with Gordon Chang. We just spoke with House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and China says it is sending a special envoy on Middle Eastern affairs to the region to conduct mediation efforts, they claim. Beijing condemning the attacks earlier this week, now having to rely more on Russian oil due to massive supply disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. China buys up to 80% of Iranian oil. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that China is now accelerating production of submarines to attack the United States. Closer to home, writing, quote, China has been developing new submarine technology and a bigger, better fleet that is gaining on the United States and its allies, spurring a new undersea arms race in the Pacific. These subs that can strike U.S. from closer to home, the U.S. Navy is warning. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, that is some statement that the Navy has warned us about.
Yes. You know, the Chinese, they don't actually need better submarines. All they need to do is stay close to their shores in what they call the bastion areas, like the Yellow Sea. But obviously, they do want subs to be able to get closer to the U.S. And by the way, we have Chinese submarines in the Arctic, which would be very, very close to Alaska and the homeland. So this is really an important development. And we have got to make sure that we have got the attack subs that can take out those ballistic missile submarines of the Chinese.
It's incredible. You know, the Hudson Institute has reported that China armed Iran with advanced missiles. Every warhead carries Chinese components. We've reported on this program many times that China sends these components to Iran. The guidance systems, the propellant chemistry. China provided air defense systems to Iran. U.S. and Israeli strikes decimated them. And that China invested $100 billion in Iranian infrastructure. I mean, clearly, China is on the side of Iran with all of this, and then they want to send a Mideast envoy to go condemn the attacks today. How do you see this?
Well, first of all, that envoy is going to try to stop the United States from attacking Iran. And clearly what we should be doing is ignoring this guy. You know, the Chinese are an enemy combatant. That's the way we should treat them. They have been supplying Iran with all the components for their weapons, as you just talked about. Diplomatic support, propaganda support, elevated commodity purchases. Last year, 87.2% of Iran's exports of crude went to China. It's across-the-board support. And so the United States just needs to say, look, we want to stop this. We have to also impose costs on China.
Yeah, so why have we been buying drones from China for so long? I asked the chairman of the Intelligence Committee this yesterday. Rick Crawford was my special guest, and I want to get your take on this. I know at this point, we've stopped buying Chinese drones from DJI, but there are so many of them already in our arsenal. Here's what he told me yesterday. Watch this. Congressman, what about all of those drones right now in our arsenal that China made?
The drone manufacturing has moved so fast. Heck, I've got companies in my district that were engaged in this 10 years ago, but they were outpaced by the Chinese. They wanted to be able to offer these products to American farmers, but they couldn't keep pace because the technology changed so quick, and they were outfunded. And they had to go a different direction with it. So now we're reliant on these Chinese drones. We can't continue with that type of footing.
Do you believe this operation in Iran is as much about China?
It's a very tenuous relationship. I know that they try to characterize this as an affable relationship, and I get it, because personally they may have an exchange that may be favorable. But broadly speaking, the Chinese Communist Party is not our friend. This attack on Iran was not an attack on China, but it most certainly is an impact on China.
Has had impact already, hasn't it?
Well, it certainly has. You know, China did with drones what it's done with a lot of other things. Solar panels, medicines. What they do is they flood the market because they give subsidies to domestic producers.
Yeah.
That prevents us from developing our manufacturers. So, of course, DJI had 70, 85% of the international drone market because this was predatory policies. We need those tariffs that President Trump has been putting in place because that is an emergency. And I think the Supreme Court got that one wrong.
Yeah, okay. So, and you know, to stop a president from using tariffs in an emergency when we've got emergencies all over the place, like 100,000 people dying of fentanyl every year. But let's talk about what's going on in China this week, because China's annual parliament meeting is beginning today. In Beijing, leaders there are expected to discuss and approve policies which they say will expand China's economy. They've got growth targets on the economy of between 4.5% and 5%. Gordon, is there any way in hell that China's economy is growing 5% right now, in your view?
No, and that's what they reported for last year, 5.0. It was maybe 2.5 if they were lucky. Maybe there was no growth at all. You know, there was a Harvard Kennedy scholar who came back from a tour of China at the end of last year. He reported that the overall unemployment rate in China now is 20%. If you look at
unemployment of 20%
overall, which means that youth unemployment is probably double that. That's inconsistent with the notion of 5.0% growth.
Yeah.
You know, they can say 4.5, 5.0 for this year, but it's probably going to be negative, and especially because China's in a deflationary period. By the way, with all of the problems in the Strait of Hormuz, gas prices in China up 11.0%. Diesel up 13.5%.
Yeah.
And the National Development and Reform Commission is telling refiners, don't export anything and cancel contracts if you can.
Well, it's this indirect message, which I love what President Trump is doing here, because he's always telling us what great friends they are. And at the same time, he's saying, OK, well, you want to, you know, in so many words, you want to hold back critical minerals? Well, maybe you won't get the oil that you need, given the situation at hand. Axios sounding the alarm over the Pentagon's ban on Anthropic, saying that it could hurt America's AI advantage over China. They write this: the international race for AI advantage is not measured in years, but weeks and days. Alienating a leading American AI company and ripping and replacing existing tech could give other countries, especially China, a leg up. Now, Gordon, look, Anthropic, if you want to be a government contractor, you're not going to tell the government how to use your products, right? I mean, so on this issue, I'm not sure I agree with Axios. How do you see it?
Yeah. Well, the other thing, by the way, is that Anthropic is now trying to de-escalate the conflict, and it's now resumed negotiations with the Department of War, which means that probably they will kiss and make up. And that's important, because I would like to make sure that Anthropic and OpenAI, you know, support the Defense Department in the way the Defense Department wants.
Well, I understand that. But the only thing that worried me about the Anthropic statement, and this was really stunning, the CEO of Anthropic had this stunning ways to say that they don't want Claude, its main product, to be used for mass domestic surveillance.
Also, the autonomous firing of weapons. Now, we know the Chinese are using AI for that particular purpose.
Yeah.
So it's important that we be able to use our AI in the ways that the Chinese are. It's just really important.
Well, I think Anthropic needs to explain itself. You can't just say and suggest that the U.S. is doing mass domestic surveillance without explaining yourself.
Right. And all Anthropic is, well, all the Defense Department wants to do is say, look, if it's legal, we can use your AI. And of course that makes common sense.
Right. Gordon, great to get your take on all of this. So fascinating. Thank you, Gordon Chang. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Now, this is breaking news, and it comes to us from U.S. Central Command. Our military is making history on the battlefield. New video shows long-range precision strike missiles being used in combat for the first time ever. CENTCOM says they provide unrivaled deep strike capability. And here is the moment the U.S. destroyed an Iranian naval ship with a torpedo. This was in the Indian Ocean. It was the first time a submarine has sunk an enemy ship with a torpedo since World War II. Our military has struck or sunk more than 20 Iranian ships so far. These images show the attack from last night on a Soleimani-class warship. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says we've virtually wiped out Iran's leadership. Watch this.
Iran's senior leaders are dead. The so-called governing council that might have selected a successor, dead, missing, or cowering in bunkers. They can't talk or communicate, let alone mount a coordinated and sustained offensive. The Iranian Air Force is no more. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated. Last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice.
He says we're winning hands down. The gentleman on the right-hand side of the screen is General Jack Keane. General, Iran's deputy foreign minister just did an interview with MS Now, and he said a new leader has not been chosen. He says an interim body of 3 people running the country at the moment are preparing for the election of a new supreme leader. General, looks like they're all over the place. They're trying to control the message, and they're not being very successful on it. What do you say?
Yeah, they're in a desperate stage for sure, and we're beginning to see the fissures, to be sure, and they're on a pathway to major problems and likely some kind of collapse of this regime. We don't know for certain, but that's clearly, it appears that pathway is right in front of us. What we have been able to achieve militarily is really quite remarkable, and it's a fulfillment of the very ambitious plans that we had put together based on excellent intelligence and the very experienced forces that are at play here and knowing what we could do based on that intelligence. We have on the battlefield here the 2 most proven militaries in the world today. They have the most experience, and for the first time ever, they are working on a combined operation that has common goals together. And nobody can stand up to that. And certainly not the Iranians, who are already in a weakened condition. So let's take an example, ballistic missiles. That was the major conventional system that they have, and something that we were both very concerned about, the United States and Israel. And on day 1, we did massive attacks on that, so much so that it reduced their ability to retaliate. Remember, on day 1, they were saying weakened response, the Israelis and the CENTCOM people as well. And then our ambition is that by day 3, we would reduce their ability to retaliate and conduct attacks against U.S. bases and the Israelis by 75%. That is exactly retaliation diminishment that we achieved on day 3. Now it's up, according to the briefing we just heard by Chairman Keane and Secretary Hegseth, somewhere around 86%. Oh, that's just an example. The Navy's gone, the Air Force is gone, and certainly the drones are being depleted rather dramatically. The retaliation impact on them is 73%. And on missile penetration and drone penetration, it's down around 10%. And that is the reason, Stuart, for, by anybody's definition, light casualties, despite the heartbreak of losing 6 of our soldiers due to a drone attack. And let me say that as a result of that, certainly that has committed all of our military forces, both Israeli and American, to make certain that those lives aren't squandered. And we finish this thing completely on our terms. That this regime doesn't have the capability to hurt Americans, to hurt Israelis, or destabilize that region again, which they have been doing for almost 50 years. Now, we are seeing the pathway for this to be over.
As President Trump says, our goal is no nuclear weapons, no refining of uranium, no missiles, no drones, no production thereof, and no help for proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas. Are we going to achieve those goals relatively quickly?
Well, we're going to achieve those goals based on the conditions that we're dealing with. So we haven't set a time schedule for that. If we do it in the next 10 days, that'd be fine. But if it takes 3 or more weeks, we got some lousy weather coming in a few days. That'll curb some of our aviation operations, to be sure. The enemy always has a vote here, but not much of one now, given what we've done to them.
Yeah.
So we've always had from the beginning what we call a conditions-based operation. Those conditions, our ability to achieve our objectives, drives the length of the mission. So we're not preoccupied with time. We're only preoccupied with the targets assigned to defeat each one of those systems that you just mentioned. And when that is done, then we're likely finished. Now, the Israelis are starting a new phase yesterday, and that deals with stripping down everything that sustains the regime. Not only leadership will be seen, but the IRGC, its leaders, its entire organization, its network communication systems, the weapons that they use themselves, where they are in various cities to repress the population, The same thing with the Basel militia, the intelligence security services, and the police infrastructure that's used to repress the people. We fully intend to strip that away so that at the end of the day, these are the organizations and capabilities that preserve the regime. The Israelis are going to take that all away. And based on what we're doing to the 4 weapon systems that you just mentioned, when at the end of that, you add all of that up, it's hard to see
They've gone.
The regime being able to continue.
Can I just ask you this? Hegseth and Keane previewed what they call a gravity bombing campaign. What's that?
Yeah, well, when we started the campaign, before we had air superiority, we used standoff musicians like Tomahawk. We can deliver Tomahawks from the air and from the sea, underneath the sea and on the surface. And we were delivering precision-guided strike munitions like you just saw. That PRISM is an Army system replacing ATACMS, but this one goes longer, more lethal, and more accurate. What we have now, we don't have to use those standoff systems that are not as lethal as gravity precision systems. Now we can fly any place we want to fly, and we own the air completely. So most of our bombing from here on out will be gravity bombs, which we have unlimited stock of almost. 500,000-pound, 2,000-pound bombs, very precise, but obviously we can bring in big bombers that we normally wouldn't bring in to do that kind of work, and other fighters as well.
Yeah.
And we're not worried about them being exposed. So they will fly literally all over Iran doing that. And I like the fact that Hegseth, you know, breaking the will of your opponent is the objective of war.
Yeah.
You got fighter jets flying over your territory 24/7. That starts to break your will, believe me.
Yeah.
And that's what we're about now. Good question.
Great stuff, General, and it's great to hear this positive news about our military in Iran. General, always a pleasure. Come and see us again soon. Thanks a lot, sir.
You betcha. Thank you.
You betcha. The Senate votes today on a resolution to curb President Trump's war powers. I think the Democrats want to stop the war, but why stop now? Come on. Senate Armed Services Committee member Joni Ernst takes it on. The senator is next.
Republican and Democrat leaders in both chambers will be briefed on Iran this afternoon by administration officials. Democrat lawmakers now pushing for a new vote on the War Powers Resolution. They claim that the president is wrong to have done this. They are accusing him of moving forward with an act of war without congressional approval. Joining me now is KA Consulting President and Fox News contributor Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, thanks very much for weighing in. All of this happening as the primary season is beginning. You just heard Ken Paxton as he gears up for the Texas Senate race and the primary tomorrow. Your reaction to all of this?
Well, first, I add my voice to the chorus of those who mourn the deaths of our 4 brave men and women in action and those who are still suffering from their injuries. Maria, the president, of course, always stands with the military. I remember 10 years ago, dating back to the first campaign, he would say, if we're not there for our military and our veterans, who are we as a nation? And we are clearly the world superpower. The sheer force and training of our brave soldiers is just such an incredible thing to behold. And Maria, when those families meet the president face to face and he expresses condolences on behalf of a grief-stricken nation, aren't they going to be happy that it's Donald Trump as our commander-in-chief and not Joe Biden, sending 13 service members ridiculously to their death at Abbey Gate and then staring at his watch when he's receiving their remains? Disgraceful. And what I think is going on is people are realizing, regardless of their political affiliation, that it's a dangerous world. And if you keep accommodating and not taking action against the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, what are we doing? Then we're afflicted with, I think, which is the worst crisis in modern times in this country, which is looking the other way. Donald Trump doesn't look the other way. He stares these problems and these evil dictators in the face and is starting to remove them. My message about these primaries starting really is about Jasmine Crockett and women like that. I want the liberal women who are all of a sudden so upset and harumphing that we would dare remove the Ayatollah Khomeini and these other brutal dictators who have gouged little girls' eyes out for wanting to go to school like my daughters do, have raped and tortured and murdered women, have thrown people off bridges because of their sexual orientation. Wake up. And once in a while, put aside your political nonsense and the fact that you live online on social media, not offline, where real leaders like Donald Trump take out real dictators like Khomeini and his whole crew, and applaud it. Say America first and peace first. I can't think of anywhere, maybe the South Sudan, in this world where women were more brutally treated than Iran. Yeah, and you got the Iranian women in the street, in this country, in that country, all over the world, applauding this. And we have a bunch of liberal harumphers here who, by the way, they're all of a sudden worried about our military. You are spitting on, throwing rocks on, doxing, and threatening law enforcement in your communities. We've all seen that. So, Maria, October 7th was the accelerant here, where women in Israel were raped and babies were put in ovens. Right. So I think everybody ought to, stand with the flag here and the president.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I brought this up yesterday with John Fetterman, the senator from Pennsylvania, who was very much supportive of this operation. I mean, Republicans are pressuring Democrats, to fund the Department of Homeland Security, to also vote down this war powers vote. And that's exactly what the senator told me he's going to do. Watch this.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote it down. It's not necessary. Honestly, the entire thing, it's really an empty gesture. There's not going to be any votes. But when you're not even breaking the war powers resolution, why are you even doing that? I'm tired of seeing people, go on social media and saying we can never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb, and Israel always deserves insecurity, and they deserve to exist. Well, if you're not willing to do about it, then it must just be empty words. President Trump was willing to do the kinds of things that are necessary to provide those things. Now, if you really want to prevent Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb, he did try to negotiate with them. There has been treaties. There has been other negotiations that never worked. And they had 900 pounds of just below weapons grade weapons. So, here, do you really committed, or are you just going to drop empty tweets and just try to have it both ways and pretend that it really matters? So, and that's why I'm going to support that. As a Democrat, I know that's absolutely the right thing to do.
That's exactly what you just said, Kellyanne. And you have one Democrat, the senator from Pennsylvania, who has shown incredible leadership, John Fetterman. We have an operation that was massive. Let's not forget how, they have been chanting death to America for years. Here's General David Petraeus with me yesterday. Watch this.
This is both an extraordinary military achievement by the Israelis and the Americans. Of course, hundreds of planes on each side, and then also hundreds of cruise missiles coming out of various ships. So a really massive effort. Clearly, a lot of this was led by intelligence, precise intelligence, and a degree of stunning arrogance on the part of the Iranians, who I assume said, well, gee, they didn't attack when they normally do in the early hours of the morning, so we can get together and meet, which is how the intelligence developed that enabled the killing of the supreme leader and some dozens of others who were meeting with him, and then a number of other leaders of the various security forces of Iran, and then also going after any of the remaining air and ballistic missile defenses, then the retaliatory means, the most significant of which are the longer range missiles.
So, Kellyanne, the question becomes, what will this mean? I mean, after we get through the fog of war, and the president said this is going to go on for another 4 weeks, but once we're out of this, the question becomes, what will this mean for the Republicans and President Trump come the midterm elections? There is an official consensus number, 500,000 to 620,000 people of Iranian descent living in America right now. I mean, they are celebrating President Trump. Your reaction to that and what you think this translates into come November?
They are, and I hope that they'll go out and vote according to that and tell their friends and family as well. Maria, we have a very large Jewish population in this country also.
Good point,
President Trump has done better among American Jewish voters than Republican presidents in the past. But I think that those numbers should really flip now. We'll see what happens. Maria, as for these primaries, you know, President Trump knows and works with both Cornyn and Paxton, has not given a full endorsement to either one publicly. And I think what I fear most about the fall is that President Trump is not on the ballot. I've told him we prosper when you're in the Oval. Boy, do we prosper. We're safer and more prosperous. But we suffer when he's not on the ballot. And even if he endorses you, gives you his money, stands at a podium with you, it's not the same. So him being able to get his voters out. Iran is important because he's configuring the whole Middle East landscape. This isn't just, he didn't just wake up one day. The intelligence was right. They were all going to be together. But look what he's done with all the neighbors around Iran in his first term, and especially now. There's Abraham Accords, everything with Israel. So we know this is going to go into the fall. And any Democrat that resists American strength and military prowess, I think will go down at the ballot box.
We will leave it there. Kellyanne, always a pleasure to get your insights on all of this. Thank you so much. Kellyanne Conway. We'll be right back.
Interior Secretary Doug Burgum is in Venezuela right now, focusing on energy and critical mineral partnerships. Let's go to Edward Lawrence in Venezuela. He has an exclusive interview with the secretary. Edward.
Yeah, and he's had a very busy 2 days here in Venezuela. Some big deliverables. Yesterday, the rare earth mineral mining expansion of the law that was announced by the Venezuelan president. Also, today, they had a signing for Shell to increase their presence here on natural gas. So joining me now is the Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum. Thank you. How big of a deal were these agreements for Venezuela and for the United States?
Well, if you take a look at the trip right now, it just reflects back on one thing, which is the U.S.-Venezuelan relationship is moving at Trump speed. When President Trump called together all the energy leaders in early January, some of them were here today. Baker Hughes, Halliburton, KBR, American companies down here, in addition to folks like Shell, signing deals and moving this opportunity forward.
Some of these companies were kicked out. Were there security guarantees that American investments will be protected here? We heard some positive news from the Venezuelan president.
Well, certainly, and I think the world has seen a signal because before the month of January was over, Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president, her brother, Dr. Rodriguez, who's the head of their legislature, together they passed a complete redo of the hydrocarbon laws in this country that drives more consistency, more transparency, more stability, more security, more opportunity for market-based approach. And yesterday they said that they're introducing a similar law related to mining minerals, which includes critical minerals and rare earths. And so the optimism among the mining crowd yesterday was great. And they even said, hey, if you've got suggestions, give it to us, and we'll maybe consider putting those in the law.
What does that mean, expanding the law? American companies will be protected? What does it mean?
Well, I think, again, what capital flows to where it is most secure and where it gets the highest return. So they're putting elements into their law that would help protect that capital, help make sure that the contracts that are being awarded are consistent and fair, that there's a way to do arbitration afterwards if there's any conflicts. But again, creating those in an environment. The leadership of Venezuela talks about they understand they have to be competitive. They understand between their taxes, their regulations, and their government takeovers, they were not competitive for capital to flow. They want to be competitive. They know they've got some of the best resources, largest oil and gas reserves in the world, but also tremendous mineral reserve in this country, gold, coal, bauxite for making aluminum. I mean, all the things that they have here that the world needs and the U.S. would benefit from, all of those things are available, but you have to have the right environment. But companies lining up yesterday and today, part of the U.S. delegation, U.S. companies coming here that want to invest. That's great for affordability back home, and it's fantastic for creating jobs both in Venezuela and back in America.
Can we believe that environment is here now?
Well, all relationships in the end are based on trust, but the fact that the Venezuelan leadership under Delcy Rodriguez moving so quickly to align themselves with the U.S. But again, it is you can't argue with geography. I mean, Venezuela, 4.5-hour flight from the U.S. This is the shortest. If you're shipping oil to a Gulf of America refinery, it's 5 days. They were shipping some of their product for 40 days around the world. It is so beneficial to both the U.S. and Venezuela for us to have a tight, synergistic partnership around energy and around minerals, just like we did 25 years ago.
Talk about that oil supply. We've had concerns about Iran, and the oil prices have gone up a little bit, coming down a little bit today, but have gone up. How concerned are you about the oil prices, and could this be the solution to that, and when?
Well, I would just say again, kudos to President Trump. We wouldn't be here right now having these discussions without President Trump's bold, decisive, and courageous leadership back on January 3rd. That was game-changing. There's a sense of optimism and hope among the Venezuelan people that they have an opportunity to get back to where they were before with a strong economy. I mean, understand, 25 years ago, their economy was almost 4 times larger than it is today. They see that they have a chance to get back in that game thanks to President Trump. And what that means relative to global oil prices. Again, brilliant strategic move by President Trump to do this first before Iran, because this is an opportunity for oil and gas to flow to the U.S. and to flow to the world, help keep those prices down, make sure things are affordable in America. President Trump understands you can't separate energy from the economy, and you can't separate it from national security, and he's delivering on both fronts.
American Airlines is going to be the first airline to do flights here to Venezuela. How important is that for the Venezuelans? I heard they wanted to have sanctions lifted, visas being able to be more freely given, and as well as direct flights. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's just another step forward in terms of the progress and the strength of this relationship between Venezuela and the United States, but it's a step towards the normalization of relationships between the two countries. American Airlines can be the first. I think direct flights coming out of Miami. It's going to even be a shorter flight from there. I mean, it could be 2.5 hours or from Miami to get down here versus the 4.5 I was describing on a flight was from Washington, D.C., from the capital to capital. But there will be other airlines that follow, and again, that's going to help build relationships, build commerce, and keep this relationship moving forward.
You were talking about investments now. How long do you think it is? Because we've seen a lot of poverty as we're walking around Venezuela. Is this the effect, first of all, is this the effect of what happens under a communist regime? Secondly, how long will it take to turn some of this around so Americans feel safe here?
Well, I think anybody that thinks that communism or socialism is the answer should read the famous book called The Road to Serfdom, because this is where it always ends up. High taxes, high regulation, government takeovers. The stories we heard around the table. Some of the companies that are here both yesterday and today that are back, these are companies that have been nationalized. Some have been nationalized twice, but the resource is so great, the people here are great, the country is great. They want to come back. They believe in the future that President Trump has created. But again, you get market-based economy with this kind of resource, and whether it's mining, minerals, power generation, AI, oil and gas, petchem, the sky's the limit. I mean, this literally could be one of the richest countries in the world, and to have them as our friend, our ally, and our trading partner, that is absolutely terrific for Americans, because it's going to keep prices down in America on energy, and that's what we need to keep the prices down on everything.
Chevron told me that they can make their goal, they told President Trump, of 50% more oil production within the next year. After looking at things on the ground, first of all, is that feasible? And second of all, what does that mean?
Well, absolutely feasible. And of course, Chevron being one of the largest producers of Venezuelan oil. So they were here, they were operating, they've got a head start on others. But, opening up, getting modern technology, modern American engineers down here, it's very easy for them to increase their production by 50%. They announced that yesterday was their record all-time production in Venezuela, and the goals that Venezuela has is to just keep on charging forward on more production. More supply means lower prices, means more affordability for Americans.
I know you need to go. Last one. Do you think this can continue? American money is coming in here, but can this momentum continue, and what does it mean for American companies and American jobs?
Well, I was optimistic when we came down here yesterday. I'm leaving even with a more positive feeling, because the companies we met from Venezuela, the leadership that's here, everybody wants us to work. Everybody knows that their best hope for prosperity here at home, for peace in the world, is tying themselves to President Trump and the U.S. economy. As you know, when the U.S. is entering a golden age under President Trump, allies like Venezuela, they become a strong partner. Our economies get back to the way they were to be integrated. They can ride right on our coattails and also have their own golden age of abundance.
And you think this can be a good ally in the future?
Absolutely. There's history between our two countries. There is certainly ties, and I think what we saw today was, for many of the companies were here, they used to operate here, they got nationalized. All the top talent left with them. I mean, I met with one of the companies today. It's got 600 executives working in Houston around the world that are from Venezuela. And so, as Delcy Rodriguez said, this is like a family reunion. This is like a homecoming. We have many ties that we can really quickly. And by the way, Venezuelans love President Trump, and they love America. You drive around this town, and what do you see? You see people wearing NBA jerseys and watching U.S. baseball. This is a country that's culturally tied to ours. I think they're excited. They feel like there's a new birth for this country happening. And again, thank you. That happened on January 3rd, thanks to President Trump.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I also saw some Domino's pizzas here. I'm going to throw it back to you guys in the studio there. We did see Domino's pizza. Didn't get any when we were down here, but we also heard Delcy Rodriguez say that she wants Venezuelans to come home now, and it's safe for them to come home and work.
Edward, that was a great interview. Can I ask you, though, where can you get the hat the secretary's wearing? It's a sweet hat. Do they sell those things?
Brian Brenberg wants one of your hats. Do they sell them? Where can we get one of those?
Yeah, we got merch at the Department of Interior, and of course you got to love the bison. So
yes.
He's on our flag, he's on our caps, he's on our patches. But let's hear it for the Department of Interior.
Yeah, he's a big fan, promoting the interior.
Good stuff. Thanks, Edward. Appreciate it, Secretary.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, guys.
Welcome back. Day 6 of Operation Epic Fury. The Pentagon releasing new video showing an American submarine entirely taking out an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka. This is the first strike of its kind since World War II. The U.S. military deploying Lockheed Martin's long-range precision strike missile for the first time in combat against Iranian targets. The Gulf Cooperation Council, meanwhile, calling an emergency meeting today on how to deter ongoing Iranian aggression. It comes as Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said yesterday the U.S. will take complete control of Iranian airspace. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the Senate voting to reject a war powers resolution that would have blocked President Trump from ordering further military strikes without congressional approval. The measure needed a simple majority to advance. Republican Senator Rand Paul voted for it, while Democrat John Fetterman voted against it, as he first told me that he would. The House is now expected to vote on their own version today. Joining me now is Arkansas Congressman French Hale. He is the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee. And, Mr. Chairman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
You bet, Maria. Good to be with you.
First, on this war powers resolution, are you expecting it to fail in the House? Where's that going?
I do believe we have the votes to block the particular war powers resolution that we're considering. Let me tell you, it says withdraw all troops, all ships, all theater and operations, and that's right in the middle of combat operations. So I think it's ill-timed, ill-conceived. And let me remind all the American people, under the War Powers Act, the president can conduct Article II operations in the defense of American interests, and he has 60 days to do that. President Trump fully complied with the War Powers Act by consulting with the Gang of 8 in Congress well before the actions of last weekend, and then continued to consult. And yesterday, the House and Senate, or day before yesterday actually, the House and Senate both had extensive, well over an hour classified briefings from Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Gang of 8, because it's true. I mean, cannot be underestimated. The president and Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with the Gang of 8, and one of those members, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Rick Crawford, joined me yesterday on this program, and we talked about the impact of all of this on China. I want to get your take on what he said to me yesterday. Watch this. Congressman, what about all of those drones right now in our arsenal that China made? Can't they see everything that's in that drone that we can see since they made the drone?
Well, there is the potential for that, and that is why I've been, for years, been very strong advocate for, decoupling from these Chinese-made products. The drone manufacturing has moved so fast. Heck, I've got companies in my district that were engaged in this 10 years ago, but they were outpaced by the Chinese. They wanted to be able to offer these products to American farmers, but they couldn't keep pace because the technology changed so quick, and they were outfunded, and they had to go a different direction with it. So now we're reliant on these Chinese drones. We can't continue with that type of footing.
Do you believe this operation in Iran is as much about China?
It's a very tenuous relationship. I know that they try to characterize this as an affable relationship, and I get it, because that personally they may have an exchange that may be favorable. But broadly speaking, the Chinese Communist Party is not our friend. This attack on Iran was not an attack on China, but it most certainly is an impact on China.
Congressman, what do you want to say about that? Because obviously the sort of standstill that we saw, and I know President Trump is trying to loosen that up in the Strait of Hormuz, has impacted China and its ability to expect a free flow of oil to China at this point, right?
It's right. I mean, China is squarely caught in the middle here. They buy all of Iran's oil, all the currency that Iran has earned under the intense maximum pressure sanctions by the Trump administration is coming from China. And it's a terrible triangle of death, with China providing that money and Iran providing technology, ballistic missiles, and support to Ukraine's illegal invasion in Ukraine. So you see that death triangle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the United States Navy's security in the Persian Gulf absolutely benefits the Chinese state, because they are so dependent on Middle East oil. So that puts them in the middle, and it shows you the importance of still U.S. naval operations in the Persian Gulf, not only just to our own regional security and the Gulf Cooperation Council area security, but also even to countries far, far away like China.
Mr. Chairman, let me move on to your work on the digital assets legislation. President Trump the other day called for banks to engage constructively with the crypto industry regarding negotiations around the Clarity Act. And he criticized their attempts to undermine the Genius Act in a tweet. He said the banks should not be trying to undercut the Genius Act or hold the Clarity Act hostage. They need to make a good deal with the crypto industry, because that's what is in the best interest of the people. It suggested that the administration may be less aligned with the major banks and their opposition to the stablecoin yield pass-through. I want to get your take on that. Where do we stand? Do you believe the president will want to see crypto pay rewards for money held on crypto platforms as opposed to the major banks?
Well, I want to thank the president and his top AI crypto advisors, David Sachs, Patrick Witt, for engaging over in the Senate and trying to find a legislative solution for them. You know, we did that last year in the House. We got 78 Democrats to join the Republicans, and we passed the Clarity Act and the Genius Act with substantial margins, bipartisan. And in those bills, we had the two principles. One, that stablecoins would not pay a yield. Why? Because we view it as just a new payment token to be used on a blockchain. It's not meant to be a bank. It's not meant to be something that it's not. And so on a bipartisan basis, that's been in the Genius Act. So the Genius Act does not say that you can pay a yield on a dollar-backed stablecoin, whether you're issued by a bank or issued by a non-bank. So this issue of rewards comes up. And my best advice is that that's handled in the rulemaking by the Treasury, where bank and non-bank issuers of a dollar-backed stablecoin are treated identically when it comes to sales practices, marketing strategies, in terms of does one have an advantage over the other? Because banks certainly have packaged products and provided incentives in their own business. So I think the non-bank dollar-backed stablecoin issuers and their partners and exchanges, they want to have a similar ability to package products not unlike the banks. I think we can find a solution here.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, and I understand that this impasse centers on whether these digital asset exchanges should be allowed to offer rewards programs and pay money to those who have money on the crypto platforms. But I'm wondering if, you know, companies like Coinbase and others are coming up with new ways to pay those rewards, like in a backdoor way. Because one of the issues that came up was the idea that these companies want to pay rewards if you're in, quote unquote, a membership program. Right? I mean, I spoke with Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong about the issue, and here's what he said recently. Watch this.
This stablecoin reward issue is very important, and I think you know, President Trump has showed incredible leadership here, creating a strong crypto agenda. We just got the Genius Act passed into law, which actually did enable stablecoin rewards to happen. You know, the banks had their own concerns, and we reached a good outcome in the Genius Act. And now the banks really are coming and trying to undermine the president's crypto agenda. They're trying to protect their own profit margins, taking money out of the pockets of hardworking average Americans and putting it into the coffers of these big banks that are hitting record profits. And so our view is that there should be a level playing field where banks and crypto companies can lean into stablecoin legislation as an opportunity, and that includes paying rewards to Americans so that they can earn more money on their money.
See, I mean, Congressman, a couple of things here. On the one hand, isn't it in Coinbase and the crypto platforms' best interest to keep delaying this, delay? Because as we're delaying it, they are actually paying rewards. Isn't there a loophole in the Genius Act because of a third-party player that enables them to actually pay a reward right now? So they can delay all they want and still pay rewards, even though what you just said is supposed to be what we're talking about, whereas everybody's on the same playing field, nobody's going to pay rewards. So there's that, and number two is this backdoor idea that, you know, the crypto companies can say, okay, we won't pay rewards, but if you're part of a membership program, you're getting a reward. And then the third thing I want to ask you about is the fact that there's not the same playing rules. I mean, you look at any bank, you go to any bank, and we see very clearly it says FDIC insured. Right? They have deposit insurance. We know a bank is FDIC insured. You don't have that with the crypto platforms, do you?
No. Well, then the dollar-backed stablecoins are simply backed by those FDIC-insured deposits or U.S. Treasuries as their backstop. And that's why I say the whole purpose of this was to create a dollar-backed payment stablecoin as a token to be used in payments on a blockchain. It wasn't per se to create a whole new financial device beyond that, and it to be used by both fintech companies as well as banks. Here's my view, Maria. We need sales practice on a level playing field. And secondly, I think when banks tokenize deposits, some of this issue will go away.
Okay, Congressman, thank you for clearing that up.
Bet.
I know there's a lot of nuances here, so I'm glad that we talked about all of that, and we appreciate your work on this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Maria.
All right, Congressman French Hill on Capitol Hill. We'll be right back.
All right, hugely important government actions are now being taken that wind up getting a string of ships, oil tankers, through the Strait of Hormuz. I spoke to Treasury man Scott Bessent just moments ago about this. Take a listen, please. All right, we welcome back to the show Treasury Secretary, Mr. Scott Bessent. Some important news. Secretary, there's some really great news out there. And it's going to have a lot to do with peaking oil prices and getting them back down. You have announced, I got the press release right here, terrific stuff. The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent today announced an agreement on a detailed implementation plan by President Trump to deploy maritime reinsurance, including war risk, in the Gulf region. And then there's close coordination with CENTCOM, and this will stabilize international confidence. It will stabilize maritime confidence, that's for sure. Not that the Iranians can do anything, because their Navy is basically deep underwater in the Persian Gulf on the bottom. But I'm looking at this. This is terrific, but I think so much of the oil price problem is not about Iran. It was a financial problem. It was about reinsurance and insurance and Lloyd's of London, you know, breaking contracts. You're going to fight back. Tell us about this. This is important news, Mr. Secretary.
Exactly, Larry. And it's good to be with you. And I'm glad to talk about this because there's a lot of information out there in the press, especially the Financial Times, who doesn't want this administration to succeed. But let me tell you, this is something that we've been working on for months. At President Trump's instruction, we were able to put it forward. The DFC is going to provide up to $20 billion of ship finance. And Larry, as you said, the insurers over the weekend, when the conflict began, dropped all the insurance for any vessels going in and out of the Straits of Hormuz or generally around the Gulf. What this program will do is give shippers insurance, whether they are hauling oil, products, fertilizer coming out. And look, this is the problem here, is that there is the willingness to go through the strait if we also provide a naval escort if needed. We don't know if it's going to be needed. As I walked over here today, the Iranians said the strait is not closed. It would just not, the Iranians would not allow ships out that have anything to do with Israeli or U.S. interest. And I can tell you there's very little, if anything, that comes out of the straits there that comes to the U.S., but these are global markets, and it's roiling global markets.
Well, a lot of it, no, of course you're right. It's a global fact. A lot of it affects China, but that's kind of a different subject. I mean, look, I don't believe anything the Iranians ever say. They never close the thing. This was, as you pointed out, and as I've argued for a whole week now, this is a financial problem. This is a reinsurance problem. This is a Lloyd's of London problem. Okay, you're going to
Larry, we've solved it, and let me tell you what's wrong with the reporting. There's some very inaccurate reporting and a terrible report from J.P. Morgan, which was completely irresponsible, and I have to say, they just low grade. I mean, if I were still wearing my professor hat, I would have given the analyst an F. That he said, well, DFC only has $200 billion, and this is going to take at least $300 billion. Well, I can't tell you how wrong that is, because what's going to happen here, Larry, is now approximately 100. Before the conflict, approximately 100 ships a day came out of the Straits of Hormuz, and we can provide cover for those ships. But the real thing is we don't have to provide the DFC cover once they are out of the Straits and out of the Gulf region, because then they can go back to their regular insurance. Right.
Good point.
So it's
Great
just a completely flawed assumption. Front page of the FT. They should, J.P. Morgan and the FT should both be ashamed.
Listen, I spoke the last few days. I've spoken to people who are in the tanker business. And your numbers, couple of $100 billion. Hey, look, $20 billion is going to be enough. This is risk insurance. I get that, but again, I will say this: the Iranian Navy is at the bottom of the Persian Gulf, and I read a thing from a retired naval admiral speaking at some left-wing college outside of Boston that said little motorboats, essentially Iranian motorboats with rifles, are going to stop tankers from coming through the Gulf. I mean, there's so much nonsense out there. I think you're exactly on the right track. Look, here's my point. I'm sitting up here last night with Ed Yardeni. You know him, all right? Smart economist, one of the best in the business, all right? And he's saying to me, talking about this reinsurance plan and the naval accompaniment, the sooner you get a bunch of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz to their destinations, bunch of oil tankers, the sooner oil prices are going to peak and start coming down. That's what his point was. I'm going to echo that point. I think the world just wants to see it. Let's get the Navy. The Navy can be helpful. It's not a hard thing to do. And the world is awash in oil. That's not the problem. It's just this.
Larry, the world is very well supplied in oil. Yesterday, Treasury agreed to let our allies in India start buying Russian oil that was already on the water. The Indians had been very good actors. We had asked them to stop buying sanctioned Russian oil this fall. They did. They were going to substitute it with U.S. oil. But to ease the temporary gap of oil around the world, we have given them permission to accept the Russian oil. We may unsanction other Russian oil. You know, the other thing Treasury can do here, Larry, is there are hundreds of millions of barrels of sanctioned crude on the water, and in essence, by unsanctioning them, Treasury can create supply. And you know, we are looking at that. We're going to keep a cadence of announcing measures to bring relief to the market during this conflict. And Larry, I'm sure you agree with me that in our investment careers, the best investments you made was looking to the other side. And the other side here is that once this is over, then oil prices are going to be sustainably lower and in a safer position for years, if not decades, to come. So I would encourage people to look to the other side of this.
The president's going to be right. You're going to go back to $55, $60 a barrel. There's no question about that. I mean, you know, some of these numbers, we're doing 13.6 million barrels a day. I mean, the president's policy back in, you know, Trump 1.0 of drill, baby, drill, which he announced in 2015, for heaven's sake. You know, it just unlocked this fossil fuel spigots. It was an act of genius, an act of genius. Here's another one. I got one for you. Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Listen to this. We are producing 24 million barrels per day in oils and liquid fuels, more than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined, Scott. All right, we've got, listen to this, 110 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day. That is as much as Russia, Iran, and communist China. Here's my point. Can you get a bunch of ships, tankers, through the Hormuz, through the Strait of Hormuz? The soon as you do that, as soon as you get that done, the world confidence will return, and we'll go back to the basics of oversupply and demand, and the prices will drop. How fast can you get the ships through the Strait of Hormuz? I ask you, Mr. Treasury Secretary.
Well, again, Larry, we're going to have to see. We will await to hear from CENTCOM, and in terms of when they think safe passage is possible. But we've actually seen some Iranian vessels go out. We've seen some Chinese vessels go out. So I think that this could be a matter of, I don't know whether it's a week or 2 weeks, but we are on track to get this solved.
Scott, as soon as you get it done, I'm telling you, it's going to be like magic. You know that. You're a market-oriented guy. As soon as you get it done, the price is going to peak. The stock market's going to bottom. It hadn't been that bad anyway. We were looking at some numbers. I don't know. So we've had 7 days, all right? We're ahead of schedule. I believe everything the president says. I have so much faith in him. And this war is exactly what we need to do to finally end the long 47-year war against this country by Iran. I have great faith in him and our great military and so forth. But I'm just saying, the sooner you get a bunch of ships through the Gulf, through the Strait, that's going to be, the price of oil comes down, stocks go back up. Stocks haven't. The Dow's lost 3 percentage points, okay? 3 percentage points in 7 days. The S&P is off 2%. It ain't bad. It's like not the end of the world. These headline writers are just crazy because they don't like what Trump is doing.
Larry, you know, the Iranians are fighting on 2 fronts. They're fighting a losing military battle where they're being overwhelmed. As Secretary Higgs, the General Keane, and the president have all said, tonight will be our biggest bombing campaign, and will do the most damage to the Iranian missile launchers, the factories that build the missiles, and we are substantially degrading them. Our campaign has been overwhelming. So having not been able to succeed there, they're trying to create economic chaos, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. There are a lot of headline writers, a lot of other networks want to speak to the contrary, but we've considered all this. This is in the president's calculus, and things are proceeding as planned.
President is changing history, Scott. He's changing history. He's bringing freedom and prosperity to the Middle East, but he's also bringing freedom to the entire world. He is changing the whole international architecture for the better, for the U.S. And this is such an important thing. And I have faith in it. I do. I've said this. I've been talking about it all week.
You know, Larry, the other thing, too, is, as you said earlier, the sound U.S. policy of being an energy superpower is thanks to President Trump, both from term 1 and then reaccelerating the commitment in term 2.
Pure genius, the drill, baby, drill. Pure genius.
So we have energy security and sovereignty.
All right. Give him hell, Scott. Give him hell, Mr. Secretary. Terrific stuff. Thanks for coming on. Let's get CENTCOM to put the Navy in straits. It won't take long. The faster you do it, the quicker the problem's going to be solved. I got to get out. I know you're heading over to the Oval. Good luck, my friend. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, Larry.
Good to see you.